She's got bangs that attack every corner of her loving face, words that float in some light on a cloudy day with my heart in mind. I don't mind another day, even though some nights our stomachs cause pain. My eyes still sparkle the times when I hear your name, and our hearts, we remain the same. Just gangs that attack every corner of a loving face, words that float in some light, and cloudy day, my heart and mind. I don't mind.
Hi, it's so good to be back after our little summer break, and no worries, you're still listening to International Love Story. We just changed the intro a little bit for this episode because the song you were just listening to is a song that Jesse wrote for his girlfriend Rita after meeting her. It's called A Winter Smile. It's so heartwarming, and it was just a huge surprise when he suddenly sent this song to me, and I had to use it for this episode. So as you might guess, this is what today's episode is about. So it's about Jesse and Rita. Rita is from Cambodia. Jesse is from Hawaii originally. And they both met in Sweden a couple of years ago, and nowadays they're living in Germany. So they also choose to live on neutral ground, just develop their way, and this is also part of the episode. So we're going to talk about that. After all, life is not about going the straight path. It's about discovering other trails on the way and enjoying it and just living life at its fullest. And besides what others are saying and what others are thinking, but we're also going to talk about how they managed the moving and traveling financial wise, which I think is a very interesting and important topic. So I would like to dive directly into this conversation. Enjoy today's episode and leave us some feedback.
My winter smile, my winter grin.
So welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to get to know you guys a little bit better. I mean, we had the pre-call, and I've learned a little bit about you. It's just so nice to see you sitting on the other end. So for everyone who's listening right now, so they're sitting on the couch, but Rita is sitting in front of Jesse. It's just like a very dynamic and very cute picture. It's like so nice to see you so happy. I just love it.
I love the word you described, that we're united, because it sometimes we didn't think of that because it's have been on and off, and it's just nice that we are now together.
Yeah, it has been a long way for you as well. I mean, let's just start with when did you guys start dating? How did you meet? When did you meet? And how did everything develop to the way it is now? Because as I remember, the last time we spoke, you told me that it all started in 2016, which is quite a while ago already. And then you basically fought your way to where you are right now. So let's start from the beginning. How did you meet?
So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's always crazy to us to actually think about how long we've been together. It's similar to when people ask us how long have you been in Germany, and in some sense we feel like we've just begun, and other times like, oh, we've been here for over 2 years. Like, okay, it's going by really quick. And same thing with us. Like, we've been together now for over 5 years. Coming up pretty. I guess we're actually past 5.5 years, and that just blew by in some ways, and in other ways was, like you said, such a fight at some points. But it all started when we both were studying abroad. Rita took a bit more of a winding path than me, starting in France coming from Cambodia to go to France, and then from France to a summer in Spain, to go up to Sweden for her study abroad program. I was studying abroad from Hawaii. I went from Hawaii to California, and then California to Sweden. And our first time we met is kind of up for debate. We have different memories of the same night. I have a Halloween party that I threw at the international dorms, where basically I organized a great party. And halfway through the night, everybody decided that it would be fun to go to a slightly different party, just 2 floors up on the dorm. And I was sulking on my floor. I'm like, I'm going to enjoy my party. I threw this, so I'm going to stay here. And at one point, she came to that party and met me on one of the first floors, and said, "Oh, are you Jesse?" I'm like, "Yeah, cool."
I had this memory. That I would go around like the first floor, and then go to another floor that they're supposed to have another party too, just to go around and see people's. And I remember looking up who were the ones that host the party, and I remember like the picture of a person, and I was like, yeah, this guy seems to be that one. So I'm just asking, are you Jesse, like the one who threw the party? It sounds pretty strange at that moment. And then after that, I remember just like, okay, we'll just walk away. But he had no memory of that, so it's up for debate whether
Yeah.
I do met him on that day or not. But I feel like I remember it very well that it's such a strange moment of interaction and the strange exchange. So I think I remember it really well that it happened.
It was a strange night.
Yeah.
It was a strange night, but still fun. But the time that we for sure met, that we both have memories of, was when we had a mutual friend who's having a going away party. That happened to be on my floor of the international dorms. And I saw her and her friends, sitting there, and I could tell that they weren't from the same dorms. They seemed like they were a bit kind of out of place and kind of didn't know who to talk to or what to say. And for me, like my natural, like since it's my floor of the building, I kind of felt like that sense of being a host kind of position, and wanting to make sure that everyone that was there felt comfortable. And I was like, okay, these people obviously are not, and especially coming from Hawaii, it's a big thing that people feel happy, people feel comfortable where they are. And so I went over and started talking to them. Obviously, I knew she was cute too, which is a factor. But regardless, I wanted to make sure that everyone felt good. So I started talking with her, and the night went on pretty quick. And we had some nice moments, but it felt like something, just like a person that you meet here and there. I was going to be moving away relatively soon to a different town in Sweden, so I was already kind of saying goodbye. But then later on, around Christmas time, she sent me a text kind of asking, hey, how are you doing? Because we were on Facebook together, and I know you're also celebrating Christmas away from family. What are you doing? How's it going? And I was like, okay, this is really interesting. I met her just once, and now she kind of spontaneously texted me here. She's gone on to say that was just merely a friendly gesture, but I interpreted it as more. And from that interpretation, maybe turned it into something more, which in the end worked out, because we met up for coffee, what Swedish people would call a fika, where you meet with coffee and tea and pastries, some good conversation. And it's kind of like a date, not really a date. You just be friends. So we met up like that, and everything kind of the dating really started when we sealed the deal on New Year's Eve, getting close to midnight and realizing we have like 2 or 3 minutes to midnight, and then running across this park to go to the water where we could see the fireworks at midnight. And she was going too slow, so I picked her up. We ran across the field together to go see them, and we got to midnight, and I was already kind of like, okay, if there was ever a moment to try to kiss someone, I think this is it. And luckily for me, that was probably one of the only moments I could have kissed her, because she was like waiting for a moment for her first kiss, because it would be her first kiss ever.
Oh my God, I didn't know that. Oh, can you tell that I have goosebumps right now? Oh my God.
She's actually denied a kiss from another person, because she's like, I'm waiting for my first one, so like this doesn't cut it. And so if I would have just chosen another moment that was good but not fireworks in the air midnight on New Year's Eve good, then I could have probably gotten the same response. But luckily, the stars aligned, fireworks were going off. We had that first kiss, and for the next 2 or 3 minutes, she kept going, "That was my first kiss. That was my first kiss. That was my first kiss."
Were you aware of that this is her first kiss before you kissed her, or was it just like?
No, I knew
No.
I knew that. I don't know how much we had talked about like other relationships at that point. I think I just knew that like she was somebody that hadn't been in many relationships, but I imagine that she likely had had a first kiss or something. And being as cute as she is, I thought that it was bound to have happened. But no, I didn't know. And from that point, we kind of got to the point where we're like, okay, well, I'm moving to a new city, like a week. I'm gonna have a birthday party here first, but then after that, I gotta go. And so we're gonna be living in 2 different towns, a couple hours apart. Be kind of the beginning of long distance for us. The shortest bit of long distance was 2 hours. And so I was like, yeah, maybe we'll see each other like once a month. I'll come down there, you come up here, we can hang out. Kind of, it was like more like we can have a date here and there kind of a thing. But pretty much as soon as we started that, we realized we weren't going to be able to do it. And we realized that like one day a month was just not like us. So we got to a point where it's pretty much weekly and for long periods of time where we would see each other. And yeah, it turned into something much more full on. So I feel like when you start stuff with long distance, you really very quickly kind of have to commit a lot. Whereas if you are kind of short and you can kind of meet spontaneously, you can kind of stay in that kind of spontaneous, kind of light relationship. But when you're more long distance, if they're going to see you, they're likely going to be there for night and day, a couple of days or something like that, or a week, rather than just like a date at a coffee shop and then saying goodbye. So very quickly we turned into a kind of serious relationship.
And so did I understand correctly that you officially start dating? So the kiss was the moment you both knew, okay, there's much more than just friendship, or yeah, and that was in 2016. So 2016 to 2017 on New Year's Eve, right?
No, so 2015, December time, like around the December time that we met, and then go on to January 2016.
2016. But may I ask, like, Rita, like, I mean, every woman, or like at least it was like this with me. I hope this question is not too personal, but when I thought about like, hey, when I'm going to have my first kiss, obviously you picture it like, I think it's a woman thing, like the first kiss, and then if you want to get married, also getting married, that you have like you picture it in your head already. So you have a scenario already, and you're like, this is how it's supposed to be, and this is how I want it to be. And out of my experience, at least, so I got disappointed. So my kiss wasn't special at all. I think I was 16 or something, maybe 15, but it wasn't anything special at all. It wasn't absolutely not as I expected it to be. And I love that you've waited for the right person, and that like just imagining like the surrounding and everything, like after you had your official first date and how well it went, and you had a very deep conversation, and then you rushed to the spot to see the fireworks, and you had your first kiss on New Year's Eve. It's like, it's so crazy, it's so beautiful. It's just like a fairy tale to me. Like, but to get back to the question, like, did you know when you first met Jesse? Because you were telling us, or you were telling me that it was in this, was it an apartment? It was this party, and then you introduced yourself, and did you potentially saw him as someone you might date at some point, or did it just develop and you were just like open-minded, and you were like around Christmas time, like, hey, I just want to text him to see how he's doing because I care, because I know that he's also going to be alone. Like, what was going on? What were you really thinking in those moments that basically lead you to where you are right now?
It's crazy. I did not have seen him like the first day, the first day we had proper conversation. Um, is yeah, just seeing him like somebody who I met at the party who is really nice, like
Mhm.
somebody from the US that I have a very great experience with, and yeah, it was really nice. But I didn't expect anything else. It's just like, okay, we're not gonna see each other again. That's it. Yeah, which is somebody who was nice with talking to you and nice to you at the party. Um, and I think I remember you said something like you wanted to throw a party of a New Year's Eve, and I remember the details. Like, yeah, I don't know whether or not I will be here or what I will be doing, but at least this is one option because most of my European friends will be leaving to their home, and my home will be too far to go anywhere. So I definitely stay. Um, so I'm looking for something to occupy myself as well for New Year's Eve. So I just took the note. Um, and we said goodbye. And a couple of days later, was adding me on Facebook. I was like, okay, like we're not gonna see each other, and why even do like add me a friend on Facebook? But okay, fine. I accepted it. I think yeah. Then on Christmas Day, I had like this spontaneous friend group that like invite me to another friend home to have like a small Christmas together. So I know one of them, and the rest I met there for the first time. So basically, it's just very spontaneous, just trying to be together with someone on the on Christmas. Evening. So I was like, yeah, I know. For me, I live on campus. I have someone that I could go to spontaneously, and I could imagine how hard it'd be, like away from home and was spending this time alone. And yeah, of course, I was drinking a bit, so I was just thinking about someone, and I was just like, hey, how are you doing? Merry Christmas. Just a quick text and just thinking like, yeah, just want to know how he spent his time. Of course, he didn't see it that way. He'd see it something more. Yeah, and then we had after that he replied to me and we had some conversation going from like friendship about travel, about living abroad, about all these things. Like it nothing about, really floaty stuff. It's just about life. It's just about having deeper conversation. And I really do enjoy that very much. Is that we had a lot of good conversation together. And so he asked if we could meet for coffee. That was like, okay. I mean, in Sweden, there can be like fika, can be date or can not be a date. So I didn't want to put my expectation up. So I just went with the flow. I just have a fika with a friend. That's what I tell myself it will be. But um, and we had a moment that I know this is not just a friendship anymore. When he showed me a song in French that he did not understand, and he wanted me to listen to it and tell him what that mean. And the moment we sit across from each other, and he had me one of the headphone side, like when we were listening to it, I was trying to understand the French, but at the same time look across to the one sitting across from me, and it seemed to be so romantic. And I was like, okay, definitely he's not meant just a friend. He's definitely flirting with me. So I had that moment that telling me that okay, this is something more. So I the next day is the New Year's Eve party. So we had the fika on the 30th of December, and the next day we will see each other again on like New Year's Eve. So I decided I will be going. And then I went home and realized about my dream of my first kiss, which is it had to be three things. A person has to be meant a lot to me, and not just like a cute crush I have on just somebody who mean a lot to me. And somebody or a night place and the night time. So like, okay, New Year's Eve seems like a nice time. A night place by the lake with the firework. That's great. So he if I imagine a person who would kiss me, I think I can imagine him to be the first one, and it means to me something. So I already mentally prepared. If it come down to, I'm prepared to kiss someone for the first time. So that would yeah.
To add a couple other details, I'll start by first saying, like you, my first kiss, like you, Christina, my first kiss was not what I imagined it would be. I would say I still imagined a bit, but maybe not as much detail. My first kiss was spent completely not sure how to navigate spontaneity. You know, this kind of first kiss are kind of supposed to be spontaneous. There's supposed to be a moment, but I'm like, okay, I just don't know how to do this. So I kept pretty much repeating like, I'm going to, I got to do something because if I don't do it, I'm going to regret it. And so I want to kiss you. Is that okay? Like, it was really cringeworthy. It took like 3 minutes of talking to get to a kiss. And then it was like this really quick, and then it was over. And then it was kind of like, you know, completely anticlimactic. And it was like, oh God, that was bad. And it was at a random park in the middle of the day, and it was just not good in so many ways.
Was it just a quick kiss on the lip?
Yeah, it was just a quick kiss on the lip, but I was so intimidated to go to it, so I felt like I really had to like I was kind of reading like the terms and conditions and the warnings first of like I haven't done this before, but I need to do it, but kind of not saying what I was going to do, you know, because I kind of wanted to somewhat be spontaneous. So it was much worse. But
You
then
signed the terms and conditions. Is in black first negotiation, and then
exactly
asking
I
for
came at it quite business-like in some sense. But also, when we went on that first fika too, I was also I spent the night after that fika kicking myself in the butt because there was a moment when we were coming back from the fika. She's like, "Oh, like let's ride my bike to your place," and I was like, "Oh, 2 people on one bike. That's romantic too." So she was on the back and I was riding it. And we were getting ready to say goodbye. And since it's the day before New Year's Eve, people are already shooting at fireworks, and I was like, "This is a moment. I should kiss her." And then like I kind of talked myself out of it, and I was like, stupid. Why didn't you kiss her?" And then later on, I realized it doesn't really make sense if you have the choice between the day before New Year's Eve kissing somebody with like these crappy fireworks when the sun hasn't even really set yet, or New Year's Eve at midnight. Of course, the better option would be the second one.
And also, if I were at this part, is that you confused with the different country where I'm from.
Well, yeah, that was one of the things that stopped me. Well, because there's another person in our building who is from Colombia. And so it was not that I confused where she was from. I knew she was from Cambodia, but I had the 2 C words in my head. So I said Colombia instead of Cambodia.
Oh.
It's Cambodia. But some other factors too that I think led to that moment and made that moment kind of special. Before we had that kiss was when I came to Sweden, I decided I wanted to be more open with playing music because I was in the music industry and I played music also myself. And so it was quite fun that before that, at the New Year's Eve party, we had a small group of people in my room and we were all playing music and singing together. And at one point, people kind of kept leaving here and there. And at one point, it was just me and her in my room. And that was really quite fun and also quite made me feel like, okay, this is going to be something. She also later told me too that she noticed that my room was quite clean. And she was like, this guy has potential. He's got a clean room. The toilet is nice, seats down, and and the room is organized, beds made. Ooh, it's not every day you see it. So
yeah.
So I felt like I
have a lot of expectation.
I prepared well for that moment. Then it led to a great first kiss, which kicked off everything else.
May I ask, how old were you, Rita, when the first kiss
You
I
just
was 21.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous. I wish I
Me
would have
too.
waited, but yeah. Oh, so beautiful. 21. And you mentioned just before, Jesse, that you kind of like the distance, so you knew that you are going to be separated at some point again, but that didn't matter to you anymore because you knew that this is going to work and that this has to work. What gave you the assurance that this is it, that this is going to work out for the both of you?
I mean, I guess the biggest thing that it comes down to is stubbornness. um, and kind of relates to something that we've been thinking about and listening to lately around climate change. I can't remember her name exactly right now. Christina
something.
Figueres, the woman who authored the Paris Climate Agreement, talked about this notion of stubborn optimism. And it's not naivety to think that things can work out. It's like, I am an optimist that things will work out, and I'm going to stubbornly push to make sure that that happens. And I think it was a bit of that kind of like sealed it for me, where for a while I just wasn't sure if it would work because I could see clearly all of the challenges that would happen when my time in Sweden would be done and we would leave. And it was like, realistically, our chances of making this work are small. And it's going to be a very complex process and difficult emotionally. And so for a long time, I had the mentality that like, just enjoy it while it's here. And, at the end, don't set that expectation that's going to continue because that's just going to be too hard. Just enjoy it for what it is, as like a summer relationship or a half year relationship, this kind of thing that you can look back on, and when we are in the same place we can meet up or something. But when we get towards the end, that stubbornness started kicking in, and it was kind of like questioning, I know it's a small chance, but like, why not try? Like, why? It was the feeling too that was just like, we couldn't. If it was something where I was like, okay, I don't really find her that attractive, or there's a lot of parts of her personality that actually don't match up that well, then I could justify it a bit more. But I couldn't find like pretty much anything wrong with the relationship that I had found and created with her. And the feeling that that entire thing could be upset purely by the fact that paperwork and plane tickets and visas and all that could be complicated. I was like, that felt like such a mechanical end to an emotional relationship. And that would be so frustrating to me. Kind of like your relationship ends on a technicality. And it's like, that's, if we're going to end, like, let it be a blow up kind of end. Like, that I'm like, okay, this doesn't work. All right. And I can then come to terms with that. But I don't think I could have ever come to terms with a relationship that ended because of politics and border lines and visa paperwork. Like, it was just too frustrating. So I was like, kind of like, all right, I'm stubborn. I'm going to make this work because I think the only other option is bullshit.
Was it the same for you, Rita?
For me, I don't know. Now I see it. I can't explain why that I do have this optimism and this about long distance relationship. Maybe I have seen people have long distance relationship before in the past, where I grew up. I was actually asking him a lot when we reaching like 3 months and 4 months. Sometimes when we had a very great time, and I start thinking of the end and thinking of in the next 3 months, in 6 months, or like in June when our program is finished, like what is going to be. I want him to decide now so I can make a mental prepared. Like, are you serious with this? Are like, are you serious with this, or is it something that is going to be just what happened in Sweden on an exchange program for you? What is it for you? Because if it's nothing serious, I'm okay with that too, because I have great time, but I just need some time to prepare and not like suddenly at when June comes, like, okay, this is it, goodbye. Like, I would be devastated. So I was the one who like really asking him a lot the question and again and again, and I think it's also make us think and make you think more, because
Mhm.
I'm pretty, I was like, I feel great about someone and feel, really find my friend who of course we love more than friends, and I don't want to throw this out just because you don't believe in long distance. So it's like we can learn, we can we can try, we can, send care package that, do something. I can't throw this out because I know it's or something great.
Yeah.
Did you feel, Rita, like when it came to the point where you needed an answer, like, hey, yes or no, is this going to work on the long run as well, while being separated like while dating on distance? Did you feel like you got a clear answer from Jesse? So did you always find clear words for the situation, or was there in between, was there a time frame? Because this is what I felt with Nacho, where it was quite like it wasn't the one or the other, so we weren't quite sure where this is going to lead, and it was very frustrating. But once we found words and we said, okay, this is going to work, it worked out because we were both committed to that. So did you feel, Rita, that this happened to you? He got back to you and he was like, yes, let's try it out, and that was the moment you were both 100% into it?
Well, so this series event, I brought this up, I think once or twice, and I don't think we have a concrete answer. I didn't have the concrete answer, from him, and I was okay too. It's like, let's try to find the answer. Let's take some time. Let's think about it. I wanted to be part of the conversation, whether or not I'm going to get the answer now. So yeah, I think we had some thought, and he will look it up. So of way to bring that I could go into US because I will be done with my program before him. He will need to finish his program 1 year after. So it makes sense for me to go to the US while he was finishing his program. So he actually did research about different kind of visa. After 3 months we've been dating, to his family side probably sounds very, very weird or strange that like this, you just met someone and now you're looking for like a visa to US and all those things. And I remember his word very well. It's like, hey, don't think of me a creep or something. I just sent you a bunch of information about visa to the US, and yeah, I remember that part. So I think he needs to know some choices that he can make, like what way it's possible. So he did his research, and it seemed complicated but somewhat possible, and then it come down to a question. I think I remember he was asking me, so would you like to go to the US with me? And then I was like, okay, now I would be asked the question again. Not I asked him the question, but now being asked the question, what do I want? Like, ask myself. And at that moment, I was like, I need time alone. I was living in a share flat, and he was cooking in a kitchen where like a share kitchen. I went into my room and I needed time alone. I did my tree decision, decision tree.
Pro and cons list.
Yeah, so pro and con list. So I was like, this is pro and this is con. Is like, why would I want to go to the US? Is this what I want? And the pro is this, the con is this. And then I give him, I think, 1 hour. I needed a 1 hour for that, and he was alone in the kitchen.
Going crazy.
Oh.
And they come to terms with, okay, I'm gonna try and make this work, and then, oh wait, what? She might not want to. She has to do a pro and con list. Oh.
I mean, I can only imagine how you felt, Jesse, because you basically, you came with a solution like, hey, or with a question, hey, do you actually want to live in the US? And can you imagine yourself living there? And this was something Rita proposed kind of by sending the information over before, like a few days before. And then still not knowing, like, hey, is this going to lead the way I wish for it to lead? Because suddenly she takes her time and she's rethinking it, because obviously it's a huge step. And I feel like it's the difference between imagining something and then it comes to a point where you really have to think about it. And those are two completely different things. And obviously it's going to lead the next few years to completely different direction than you most probably have ever expected it, Rita. So I completely understand that you needed some time for yourself, basically, to overthink and to make sure that this is really what you want before heading into a direction you might not be happy with on the long run, and that's just the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah, I think what it was that is that I wanted the relationship to continue, but I wasn't sure how. Like, is it now? It come down to a question that okay, we trying to make it work by me going to the U.S., but because my plan wasn't wanting to go to the U.S., my plan was to stay in Europe. Our plan was to stay in Sweden because I love it there. Like, if I decided to go, I would throw a chance of me making it work over there. So is that what I really want? So that's I took the question, or I took it very seriously, and I don't want to give a an answer that I don't commit to. So I really need to thinking it through and give the answer that I really meant. I know I committed to. So I think that's why.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, we both kind of had that feeling. I had that feeling a bit earlier as well, because I also had some plans. I was planning to, to finish up my senior year back home, and for me, the whole process of living in Europe was also and also my interaction with like other cultures and all this. I think a lot of Americans, especially, see it sometimes as kind of like a vacation. You go and you do this, or it's a one-time event. You go to this place and you experience these things, you meet these people, and then you go back to your comfort place where you're at home and you know the culture, you know everything. And I was kind of ready to take a step away from that just by inviting her here and saying like, okay, we're going to have this long-term relationship where that is going to be a regular part of my life, of different culture, different languages and things like this. And the trips that I was planning to do in this period of time would also change. And yeah, we're both like contemplating very different life, but always it feels like whenever we come to these big decisions, we come at it with a mixture of empathy, like looking at things on an emotional level. What's best for me, my emotions, what's best for them and their emotions, how can we find a good meeting place of that. But then also almost scientifically or business like of pro and cons list or research. And like we've had multiple Google Docs that are these shared Google Docs, like USA or bust, or Germany or bust, like these kind of things. Like, all right, here are all the links that we have. What kind of leads are you currently working on? I'm looking at this visa. This visa looks like it could be good, but we have to look at these things. All right, I'll look onto that on Thursday. I'll get back to you. Let's have a meeting on Friday about that. And we can be quite regimented on it, because we're like, unless we put things down on paper and we're regimented in the processes that we have, it's just not going to work. And I've seen too much in my life people who have great ideas and passions and things that they want to do, and it just kind of sits in this place of like, yeah, one day I'm going to do this, or I'm going to make it happen. And I think especially with anything relationship wise, when it comes to these long distance relationships, it's so important to really set goals. Okay, this month we're going, how do we make it happen? And all right, how far are we on this? What's the next paper we need to find? What are the current questions we have? Who can we ask these questions to? Do we have any personal connections that we can reach out to? And so, yeah, we have to take that approach a lot of times, to kind of combine the emotional side with the pure logistical side of how do we manage this international relationship.
When so do I understand correctly that Rita came out after 1 hour of her bedroom with this list, and you basically just went through it together, right? Or did you come out with a decision already?
No, I came out with
you
the
did.
decision. I came out and I see the list and I'm like, okay, well, I decided, I'm going, and that was the moment.
A
when
question I never asked you actually, but I think it would be interesting,
Mhm.
is do you feel like your list was done fairly in the sense that were there really more pros than cons? Because I've done this before personally, where I'll make a pro and cons list and I'll kind of see the numbers and how they're adding up and I'll look at the score, and sometimes the cons are more than pros, or pros more than cons, or they're equal. But just while I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
the pros win. And then I'm like, and I can kind of like question myself, like, well, actually they are equal, but like, yeah, but no, but the pros win. Or actually there are more cons. Yeah, but this one, that should be weighted. You know, that's a weighted score. That should actually be higher because it means something.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you were like, oh, pros were 10 and cons were 8, so I go with this? Or was it like equal, but you kind of like, yeah, but I'm going to go with pros, or even more cons than pros, but you still decided? How did the list actually shape up from what you remember?
I think in terms of the listing, just the number, just based on the number by itself, I think I have more pro than con. That is not bias, or it's just what it come up, but definitely it's also weighted against, like, some stuff that as a con or like as a pro, I would weight it more or less depending on how important that is to me. So I think it's normal to have those. And I remember I don't remember all the everything that I written down, but I remember, why not? It comes like, I want to travel the world, and this is one of the things I could see, and I could experience new things, and if I don't like it, I can just come back to Europe. Why not? I'm quite young, and I have a lot to learn, to see, so let's just do it.
This is also what helped me a lot, what you just said. Like, you always have another possibility, and the possibility would be to come back and then just start something else, and maybe start from zero, even though if it hurts. Like, worst thing that can happen is that you come back heartbroken because it didn't work out, but at least you've tried. And I think it's just quite interesting what you said, Jesse, because I know for sure if I would do it, actually I did such a in my head, but I didn't write it down before moving to the US. I did a pro and con list as well, but after all, the pros just like weighted more because, like, I'm a very emotional person, so emotions come first. And if my gut feeling says, okay, let's just go for it, I do it. And the contra list can be as long as it wants to be, but if the gut feeling says it feels good, it feels right, I will go for it. And knowing that, hey, if it doesn't work out, there's always another way. Of course it's scary. Of course it's a completely other step. Like, it's something, I don't know, most probably just 1% of people would do. I don't know anyone else who ever did it. I have no idea how this is going to work out, but I will never know if I'm not trying it out. So this is basically was my point of view. And I think it's very interesting, Greta, that you had the ability to really sit down and to analyze it without your emotions playing into it.
I don't think that I do have the emotion away from the pro and con list. And definitely, you can note down some stuff that are based on emotion as well. It's like losing someone you really love and a great relationship you just started. And those are also emotion that I would weight it in this pro and con list. I think, I think it's pretty much emotion as well. And I think it's very important sometimes to listen to what your heart really wants.
And knowing that there's always going to be another option, if anything. Yeah. And so how did it develop from there on? You both agreed that you would like to try it out, so that you would like to close the distance, that it's going to be the US. But I mean, you're not in the US right now. You're living in Germany. Like, what happened?
a lot of things.
Like when you had to say goodbye, I know that you went to Cambodia.
Yeah.
For very spontaneously for quite a long time because you just couldn't say goodbye, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I went with her there because I mean, once we kind of came to the decision of going to the U.S., that was one thing, but I think the original plan that we had to go to the U.S. was probably like version 1 of 60 different versions that developed over the course of the next few months as we desperately looked for all the different ways, and we still hadn't really figured it out. I'd say even by that summer, we had, we were more clear on it. There's more elimination. Okay, that doesn't work. Okay, that also doesn't work, and just keep looking for new options. And then, to delay saying goodbye, I went with her to Cambodia and got to be there for her brother's engagement ceremony, which is a big thing in Cambodia, a big party. Got to meet a lot of her family, and then then of course I start feeling really serious. Like, okay, I'm meeting the family. I'm part of this now. And then once I went back to the U.S., that was our first real long distance where we couldn't see each other at all, not just like the 2 hours we had in Sweden. And meanwhile, we're still working out the details of her visa, which in the end we came to the conclusion of a J1 visa.
First is just visitor.
True.
Visitor visa.
Because we had 2 trips to the U.S., but the first was a visitor visa, which should be simple, but it was still unbelievably complex. And one of the first places where I could really start seeing the complexities of my own American immigration system, which most Americans, especially the ones who I think are so anti-immigration, sometimes I think have very little understanding of what it actually takes for somebody to come through, even somebody who's very qualified to come through, and also how much a passport plays into how easy it is to get someplace. A Cambodian passport to get to U.S. is very different than another one. But yeah, eventually she was able to make it to the U.S. She moved in with me, my roommates, in my college town, and it was our first time like living together, first time living with other people. So that was, all of an adventure, and it brought new challenges too. We met in a neutral country where we were both foreigners. We both didn't know the language and the culture, and we both kind of looked at things like, oh wow, they do things like that. Oh, did you notice that? And when she got there, we ran into a situation that we were no longer in that place anymore. We were in a place where I had connections already developed. I knew the language and the culture, and she was the foreign person, and it made her feel a bit isolated. And that was kind of a reoccurring thing that we had to kind of deal with over time. But of course, the visitor visa is only 3 months long. And so after that came another trip. We went first to Hawaii for our first Christmas in the US and first time meeting my family, which was quite fun. And I felt like such a kid, just like showing her around every place and going, that's where I used to run, and that is where I used to play, and this is my favorite park, and just pointing at every single little detail along the way. And then after that, we went to her brother's engagement ceremony, and I spent a bit longer time in Cambodia the second time engagement. Then the first one wasn't wedding. First one wasn't.
First one was engagement.
True. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up. Yeah, second one was wedding. Because they both feel like such a big party that it's I honestly get them mixed up because they both feel way more than what an American wedding would be, even when it's just the engagement ceremony. And then we had another period of time where we worked out a new solution because visitor visa was difficult and we wanted her to be there for longer. So we settled on then a J1 visa, which gets her there as an internship. Basically, if you're within a year of your graduation, you can still do this in the US. So we went through a new complicated process to get her to the US.
And also costly.
And also expensive. You have to pay a couple thousand for a sponsor whose only real role is just being the middle person between you and a job, where we could have easily found the jobs ourselves and done stuff, but we needed to go through them. And for that, we paid a couple thousand. And yeah, then she was able to come for a longer period. Was in the US for a year as an intern while I worked as a music promoter. This is all in the San Francisco Bay Area. And that was, definitely exciting. We were staying with a really nice family. It was a connection to my mom's, or else we would not have been able to afford it because San Francisco is really, really expensive. But a lot of things happened in 2016. the visa was ending. At that point, the internship is not possible. There's the visitor visa, that's 3 months. And there's a work visa, but that's really competitive and complicated. And meanwhile, we have entering into our lives a new political figure who seems dedicated to
Make
devalue,
life
yeah,
difficult.
and
Yeah.
valuing
Mhm.
the lives of immigrants, actively turning parts of the population against immigrants. And I kind of lost the identity of my country. I mean, I had felt okay enough to originally bring her to the US because before she came for that longer, was it the longer trip or the shorter trip? I guess it was, yeah, because Trump.
Yeah, shorter trip.
Yeah, I mean, before she came for that short trip, I did a hitchhiking trip in the U.S. To kind of reconnect to my country after that year in Sweden, where I went from Michigan to California with hitchhiking and just like meeting people along the way. And granted, I'm doing this as a white male, but despite that, I mean, I still feel like I was able to see a bit more representation of parts of the US that had seemed so different, that were quite conservative and things like this, and just was met with such incredible amounts of kindness and generosity and openness that I felt comfortable enough to bring her there. But by 2016, it was just getting harder and harder to keep justifying staying there with the climate of the US, the current kind of conversations people are having. And we were in California, which definitely made it better, but we started missing Europe and we started looking for options, if not here, then where? And so we've focused on Canada for a while, and we were pretty set on going to Vancouver, and
Vancouver.
Mhm.
and we had everything kind of set up. And towards the very end, we were like, oh, I guess there's actually this one little thing we didn't notice, and that kind of completely bars you from coming, and we won't be able to do this in time to get you there. We could do it, but we need much more time. And so then
Okay.
halfway through that year, we had to completely come up with a new plan. And we were like, okay, well, we want to go back to Europe. Okay, well, how can we go to Europe? Work visa? No, it's complicated. Student visa, that's easier. Okay, but I'm already from going to school in the US. I'm so much in debt already. I'm $30,000 in debt for just a bachelor. I don't want to go and have to pay more. It's like, okay, but is there a country where we can go to school and have free education? Maybe that could be our way. Oh, well, Germany, this is possible. So then it's like, all right, well, then we'll go back to school. What do you want to study? and they're like, I think I want to go into something with like around climate and sustainability. Okay, well, I have a music industry background, but I want that to be more strengthened with business. So maybe I'll look for like an MBA program or maybe just a bachelor's program in business, international business. So then we looked for universities that had both of those things as a common program. And like, which universities could we both go to school in? And we identified 5. I don't remember all of them. I remember Kleve, Magdeburg, Lüneburg, Kiel, Nuremberg, yeah, and one other
Mhm.
one. And Nuremberg was definitely one of our top ones. But in the end,
Mhm.
I got into a few and she got into a few, but they didn't match up. So then we're like, okay, what do we do now? And we just decided, okay, let's just try living in between 2 schools and trying to make that work. So we moved to the town of Uelzen, northern Germany. Um,
Mhm.
and her school in Lüneburg was around half an hour away. And then my school in Magdeburg was a couple hours away. And so we're like, okay, we'll just take the trains each day and we'll just make it work. But in the end, that ended up being way too expensive for me because my school didn't pay for any of the train tickets. So it became more expensive than our rent. And we decided we had to move to Lüneburg and I would find work. And so I found work in Lüneburg, luckily with a startup, speaking mostly German, but kind of making it work with even my broken
Mhm.
German. And yeah, and then she found her path through the university and really fell in love with sustainability. And that's how we arrived here.
Yeah, I wanted to add the parts like
Sure.
of the time in between. Actually, those at first we had when we left Sweden for Cambodia, and then when you left again to the US, we had around I think 4 months that we were apart
Yeah.
until I went to the US for a visitor visa, and then I came back working for another visa, trying to get another visa to US, and those time in between was like 4 months. Like there were so many possibilities, but at the same time seemed out of reach and to setting up some things. And yeah, it was a long 4 months when you don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And afterward, the visa to Germany didn't work out fast enough that I can fly out directly from US to Germany. So we were okay. Then I have to go to Cambodia because my visa in the US were done. So I was waiting, for working on my visa to Germany around another 4 months, and Jesse was living in Cambodia for around 4 months, and he was working still for his company in the US over there. So that time in Cambodia, he got to learn a lot more about the culture and the language and everything. Yeah, and so like those time in between feel like just feel like forever, and it kind of give us like a little post-traumatic stress of like, oh, it is gonna happen again, and would that be ending? And even though we are and now I feel much more safer, but the first year in Germany, well, we don't know how it worked financially. When we're here, is it going to be any day now? We will be again, didn't make it work. Any possible way. So, it kind of bring us some stress even we're together. It's like, is there going to be a day that we separated again?
Yeah. I mean, you have that uncertainty when you're in between things that can feel like forever. And when you don't have a date to count down to or anything like that, it feels like forever. And that's one side of the international visa, long distance and things. And then on the other side is when you are in a place and you do have a visa, then it can have the opposite effect, because then you have a date that you're counting down to, and you're like, before that date, we have to figure out something else, or the world will pull us apart again. And so you jump between these two things of uncertain distance away from each other that goes really slow, and then a period of time with each other where you feel like you're counting down the days before you're going to be pulled apart, and you have to look for an exit plan as soon as you land. And yeah, it's given us both like some PTSD around it, but then also in some sense pulled us closer together, because then each moment that we have with each other, we still value it because we know how hard it was to get there, and we still have that feeling that it could be taken away, that we could be back in that situation at some point, even though we're working very hard to make sure that could never happen.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Also, what the experience I've made or we've made is that what you just mentioned, Jesse, when you're together, basically you're also planning your future. So obviously you're enjoying your time together, but in the back of your head, you always have like, hey, what's going to be next? Is this going to, I mean, it will work out because you believe in it. And this is what you said earlier. You're stubborn, and the stubbornness brings you like what brought you where you are nowadays. But also it's just like you're together, you're enjoying it, but then there are 10,000 other things you're taking care of, you have to figure out, you discuss about, you sit together, you do your research together, and it's just like we can do much more valuable things with the time we're having together, but instead we have to sit down and discuss it and see, hey, how is it going to work out on the long run? And also what you just said, like, you never know if this is going to be the end, so to speak. Like, is it going to keep on? Like, what's going to be next? So you're always going to have the fear that something might occur that drags you from each other again. And this is just like, it's a constant fear you learn to live with somehow. And you know that in a couple of years it's going to end, but so far you don't know when it's going to end, and you just accept it. What I would like to know as well, because obviously, like, going back and forth, going to Cambodia for a couple of months. As I understood, you were able to work from there for the company in the US, but you were also mentioning that you have $30,000 debt in the US because of your studies, but you still managed to travel from A to B and to start several visa processes, which cost a lot of money. Like, how did you do that? Because I just did the process one time when moving to the US, and I spent $6,000, which was a lot of money for me at that point. But what we also spent on was obviously the flight tickets and everything else.
Sure.
And I was working at that time, so I had some savings, which brought me a long way, or which helped a lot. But how did you manage it as you were both studying before?
Yeah. I mean, it was something too where like my debt that I have is something that's kind of in the back of my head. It's like a weight that I carry with me, but at the same time, I won't say that they're nice, but they give you a lot of tolerance before you start making money. So before you start making money, they're like, okay, your yearly contribution that you have to make towards paying off your debt is 0. But at the same time, the longer you wait until you pay it, the more interest is accrued because it's constantly accruing interest. So the amount that I owe is constantly increasing. And that continues to this day. And so it's kind of like a ticking bomb that I kind of just push into the closet most of the days. And I know I'll have to deal with it at some point, but I'm kind of waiting until I'm financially stable enough so I can devote things. And we're still trying to get to that point. A lot of the plane tickets and stuff like that, I had some savings myself, but we were also quite reliant on family and friends. We at one point a GoFundMe to get Rita to the US and help her through that process, trying to ease the burden on our families for how much money they'd have to give to make it work. So a lot of it's come from our connections. And so far, even though the debt's there, it's kind of still something a bit in the background that will have to be faced one day when I look at it.
And when we staying in Cambodia too, like that was after I've been working in the US for a year, and Jesse also working full time there too. So we got some saving, decent amount that we could make it work in over there and in Germany. In Cambodia, the expenses are not that high since we are living with family, and I think that really helped a lot.
Germany was hard though. In those first months when we were both going to school, we had no incoming income, and when we came to Germany, there was this feeling of watching all the money that we had saved up over the last year, instead of going up, just like pretty quickly falling to 0. And you're trying to calculate how fast is it going to reach 0, and what are we spending money on, and getting really organized with money, but also feeling like, going out to eat, things like that were just out of the question. And we were getting, buyer's remorse for things like getting a bag of chips that cost $1.99. And we're like, we shouldn't have done that. We shouldn't have bought that. They're like, that's going to kill us, kind of a thing. Like the smallest little things that we would spend any kind of excess money on, or it would go a little bit over the budget on groceries, would feel like this is going to be, really like it just kind of, we were constantly in fear of running out of money because our future together was tied to having a place. And more than anything, that time in Germany was about, we're here on a student visa so that we can be together in a country. If we don't have this, I guess I can go to Cambodia and keep renewing a visitor visa, or we can try another visitor visa US, but it's going to get really complicated really quick. So if we can find a way to stay here, then we need to. And that drive to have enough money to maintain our life is what, originally pushed me to get a job. And I would look for work for like November to June or July the next year, for like 6 months of frantically searching for a job that would also mean that we could stay in Germany and our relationship could be held together. So it was a lot of pressure and quite intimidating at the time. But when I got it, I surprised her at her school with some champagne in little glass Coke cups and that was fun. That felt good.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. So this basically, yeah, it's an extra weight you had to deal with along your relationship. Like suddenly or finally, it's a little bit more relaxed, so it's moving into the right direction. So when did I understand correctly, Jesse? So you came to Germany like to study. So that was the original idea, right?
But the studying was again kind of like a means to an end. It was we came to study in Germany because the easiest way for us to live in one place together was to move to a place as a student. And so we were
Okay.
excited to study. We liked the idea of go back to school, but it was kind of like that was the best solution, and so that's what kind of led us there.
Mhm. So you actually came with a student visa, both of you, to Germany, and then you decided to find a full-time job, or what is it exactly? Yeah,
Full time.
to support both of you and to basically take some pressure out. I hope this question is not too personal. I mean, you had a plan. You had several plans actually before closing the distance, and you just went whatever worked out. There were a few, yeah, for example, the financial situation, obviously you had to take care of that, played a big part in your decision as well. So this is why you decided for Germany, because you don't have to pay any, you don't have to pay a student loan. I think it's just round about 600 euros for 6 months to study in Germany. Correct me if I'm wrong, if it changed. I'm not up to date when it comes to that.
Even less.
Even less, okay. Is it like, if you look back, do you feel like you are exactly where you meant to be, or is it still like, okay, things could have gone differently? We both wish to live in Canada still, or do you just go with the flow? Do you have any regrets? And again, you don't have to answer to that question because I know it's very personal. But those are things that actually went through my mind when moving to the US, because the US was never my first choice. But I knew that this is going to be the step to lead us into the right direction. Or we knew that this is going to be, and things just worked out on the long run. Nowadays, like, we are super happy, couldn't be better, but we both suffered a lot as well. How is it in your case?
You start.
For me, yeah, for me, I wanted to change my career. I wanted to change to where I'm really happy with my study program. I really want to go. I really love where I'm heading, and also a year in the U.S. put us in a lot of like stress as well, with like constantly thinking about safety, or we were living in a big city and we did not we want a bit more peace and calm, and Germany provide us that. Like, I wouldn't feel worried about things could happen. And we moved from San Francisco to a very small town in Germany, and we just okay, it's great, and we love walking in the forest, and that's perfect for us. People are just like, really? Then this is where you chose to go? And it's like, yeah, this is perfect for us. We want just a very calm and quiet time in Germany. Yeah, there's a lot of challenges through the time that we first got here, because we know that our way is not sustaining us. We need to find something else. Like our plan of work we were working on for the whole year and get us here, it's not done yet. Like it's not complete yet. We still have to work it on, and that was hard, because you have to navigate a new life, new languages. For me, studying a master program, and now we need to have a new plan. We really need to work on this new plan. And I don't think if we went someplace else would be work at all. I think Germany has a lot to offer, despite all the more challenges. I think I think I couldn't make it someplace else. I don't know what you think.
I would say that it felt like things went according to plan, in the sense that I had a plan that things probably wouldn't work. And so I think that I've kind of approached a lot of situations like that, and I feel like it's one of my strengths personally, and I would say our strengths as a couple, is that we're very adaptable. And I think it's better to go into a situation knowing that, like we like to plan things kind of in detail, but we plan it with the absolute knowledge that it's very likely, not going to be going to the plan that we have. We plan out so we can see as far as we can get with the original plan, but we know that along each of these steps, things can change, and we mentally ready ourselves to look for opportunities when those things don't go to plan. How can we make this work? And for example, the current situation we're in, where I'm working and she's coming as a student, that would have been nearly impossible to organize and arrange before we came to Germany. And so our original plan, of trying to come here and just use our savings and maybe get a mini job or something like this to sustain us was quite unrealistic, but it was the best idea we had. Mm-hmm. And there was a way to get to Germany. And we're like, everything else we'll figure out. If it doesn't work, we'll adapt. And that's exactly what happened. So in that sense, it kind of felt like it went to plan. Like, okay, yeah, things didn't work. I figured. And what options do we see? Okay, maybe I can go to work. And then things kind of lined up. But of course, we could always, debate whether, part of the reason why we didn't go to Canada was like, okay, we want a place we can go straight from the US to. And in the end, we couldn't go straight from the US to Germany either. We had to wait a few months. So we could have, made Canada work, and who knows how that would have been. One factor that had against it was it had some of the elements of the US that in many ways I would still feel much more like I'm in my home culture and she's the foreigner. So we don't get that kind of neutral effect, which is another reason why we chose Germany and Europe as a place where we're in between cultures, in between languages, and we're at a place where, we're not choosing one country over another, one family over another. We're kind of in the middle. And so, I think we can always debate which would be the best path to go, what would be the best way to adapt when things go wrong. But I think we're too focused on the future to second guess it too much. And it's just like, okay, this is where we're at now. And the experiences, whether they're bad or good, kind of give us insights on how we want to handle things in the future, what we like and don't like in a place. And that's definitely going to guide us.
Did anyone ever told you, family or friends, like, hey, what you're doing there is actually crazy? Or did you have full support right from the beginning?
Mix.
Talking about my family, though, I really appreciate their support. I'm sure if I explain to them the things that I need to do, they probably wouldn't fully understand how I did it, how I do the thing I do. But they just trust me and just provide the support that I need for whatever I'm doing, even though they don't fully understand. So I was really thankful for that. And I think, my friends also never questioned or said that will be crazy. And I don't think I have that experience. Maybe, what do you think?
Mine is, it's mixed. I would say in the end, full support from everyone important in my life. But initially, of course, there's a lot of this kind of uncertainty because especially Americans in general, we travel a lot, but we don't move a lot outside the US. And so anything that's involved with long-term, in Cambodia, it's quite regular that you're seeing people leave the country and go to other places. And in Europe, it's quite normal for people to work for a year in another country. It just doesn't really happen in the US. And even going on a vacation as far as Europe, not just going to Canada, Mexico, or, Virgin Islands, or, someplace that's closer by, seems for a lot of people like, oh yeah, like I got the feeling before I was even going to do my backpacking trip in Europe, like, oh, sure. You're going to go and see all that. Like, you're going to save up the money and you don't speak the language. How are you going to navigate? And people are kind of skeptical until you do it. And that knowledge of how skeptical people could do could be for something that was actually realistically not that difficult was something that kind of, even in the future, when I got the same kind of feedback sometimes of like, yeah, I'm going to move in with this girl and we're just going to make it work. People weren't as openly skeptical then because they, once love is involved, then it's like, okay, this is personal. But, there was still the feelings of kind of like, God, that sounds really complicated and seems like it's bound to have major issues. I kind of approached it the same way of like, felt like moving to Europe or to do a backpacking trip in Europe would be possible, even though many people seem skeptical of it. And I just kind of dedicated myself until made it happen. And I feel that this would be the same. But in the end, everyone still supported it, but it's still kind of it brings out greater questions about what we will do long term. And the friends and family that are away from me are kind of like, okay, is this where you're going to be forever, or are you going to eventually come back to us and be in a place where we can see each other, interact with each other regularly, and where we can get to know you as you currently are, rather than just kind of the people who come on vacation now and then. And so that brought about bigger questions of that. But I would say that there's definitely a bit of skepticism when it comes to these kind of big trips, just because they're not nearly as common in the US.
Yeah, which is normal, obviously. Like, I guess I hope, how do I express, like, transferring this to our situation? It was like this. Obviously people care about you. They're worried. They just want the best for you, and they've never made such an experience. And most of the people, most probably, they've never stepped out of their comfort zone to see, hey, can this actually work out? Like you just did a backpack tour through Europe, and everyone thought, hey, this guy is crazy. Okay, he's going to be back soon. This is not gonna work out. But it somehow did, because you stepped out of your comfort zone and you were willing to try out new things and just to go out there. And it worked one time, so why shouldn't it just work a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth time, because you believe in it. And this is like the optimism, what we were talking about earlier, because what I also believe in is positive energy. Like what you send out will come back to you again. And it might not always be exactly how you imagine it, but I think what's important is that where you'll end up on the long run. And it's normal that you're going to suffer. And it's normal that, especially in your situation, that you do have to take care of financial things, paperwork. You still don't know like what's going to be on the long run. Obviously, you do have a plan, but you're also willing to change and to adapt the plan a couple of times. And I think it's sometimes it's very difficult for others to understand what you're going through, because they're worried that you might just make a wrong decision, or that you're not going to be happy on the long run, or so whatever. But I think once they learn that, as you said before, Jesse, and I think you brought it to the point, love is involved. And there's another person caring for you. There's another person watching out for you. There's another person basically brightening up the room, even though if it's not always easy, but for what you're doing it. In an ideal world, like we were talking about that earlier as well, as you adopted a couple of times, but the plan E you have right now, it's plan A, sorry, not plan E. Plan A you have right now. I know you have a plan E as well, but plan A, what would it look like? Where do you see yourself in the future?
That one's the biggest question of our lives right now, because we are equally excited in some sense about exploring the world and taking advantage of our youth to really see everything that we can see. And also, I don't know, this feeling of feeling informed, every time I meet somebody from a new country and learn about a new culture, learn about a new bit of history, I feel like there's so much more to learn, so much more to see. And I know that'll be, at some point, I'm going to be settled in my ways, and these will just be kind of summer vacation explorations. And I feel like right now I can dive in deeper to things. So I feel like that's part of our ethos right now, is to explore and understand and use our youth But at the same time, that's coupled with a strong desire to find what is home, where is our community, where do we feel like we belong, what's the best mixture of friends, family, exploration, these balance between our cultures, daily happiness, systems, social systems, for setting up a family, where do they have schools and healthcare and all this kind of stuff. And so, and so we're still trying to figure out what place kind of meets all that. So we're very much, I think, in the adapt as we go. And what's been in some sense helpful is we have a few kind of like stars to orient ourselves around. We have, our wedding, which is coming up next year. Rita has this big surgery, which is coming up at one point. It has a long recovery period. And so at one point we started kind of putting these pieces into a calendar, into a timeline, because okay, especially when it comes to visas, this needs to be renewed at this point. And after that, we need to move. And then after this, we'll have this period where we have to stay here because we're seeking healthcare from here, or where we have to stay here because I'm going to school or something. And from that, we developed actually like a 10-year plan or 7-year plan, which is going to also be subject to a lot of changing. And we're still kind of seeing where that plan leads us. We feel pretty good about Europe in general, but of course we also really miss our families and miss spending time with them and having them get to know us and stuff like that. But you can't choose one place to go without choosing another place to not go. Yeah. And that is really difficult, especially when there's families involved. If the families were both in the same place, it would be very tempting to just go there. And in some sense, what we see with Europe is that we have this middle ground where we can have a place where we like the day-to-day life. We're not sure necessarily about Germany, but someplace in Europe, we feel like in general, the community and the ability to explore other countries and cultures nearby, and the social systems and the concept of the EU as a collection of countries trying to make things work, even though they're very different from each other. We like a lot of that. And at the same time, we want to plan a future where we can visit both of our families, in the same year. So that way we can get a bit of everything, which sounds difficult, but we feel like we want to find a way where we can, in the end, find a place where we're happy to live, without losing that connection to our family and our roots, and develop a community where we're at that we feel connected to.
Yeah. So it's still an open ending, so to speak. So you just let things happen and you take it one step at a time with some milestones that are set already, because you knew, okay, those we can plan already, but then we don't know what's going to come next. Yeah.
And a bit of thought experiments of, okay, how would this place affect us? Would we like it? Would we really want to stay there that long? Could we experiment and go to some place and see what it feels like? And then if it doesn't work, go on, kind of work with the adaptation. So we have a few models where we're not completely reactionary, where we just kind of see what happens. We do want to plan it out, but we're still looking for what should we even include in that plan. We're still developing it, and I'm hoping within the next year or so that we'll come on something a bit more solid to aim for and to work towards.
I just love the point, because this is why we are traveling in a van right now.
Yeah.
Because it's like on the long run, somehow I wouldn't say hope, but it could be that we find the place we both feel comfortable, neutral ground if possible, like you guys are doing it, because I know that this is going to basically add another dynamic to the relationship if you live somewhere where both of you don't know the language, like where the system is completely new to both of you, and that you can start from scratch together.
Yeah.
And we hope that on our journey while traveling with the van, but then we are also planning in a couple of years to travel South America, to check out Costa Rica, for example.
Yeah.
Also going to Argentina for quite a while. We're not sure when this is going to happen and for how long we will be in Argentina, but that we will find a place to stay.
Yeah.
And as you said, it could be just for a few years, it could be on the long run, maybe something else will cross our minds and then you just try out something else, because in the end, the imagination is the limit. So, and the experience you guys made is just like throughout positive. Because, you know, like you're together and it doesn't matter where you live after all, you know,
Exactly.
you can just like handle everything, just throw a lot of stones into your direction, but you still manage to go around it and find your path.
That's my grounding.
It's a, pardon?
I was gonna say that's our like grounding element, is that we're together, and from there everything else feels like a smaller challenge.
Yeah, you figure it out, definitely. And it's just like, because there's so many parallels, I mean, in between the way you're thinking and between the way we're thinking. And I've also discovered that there are a lot of international multicultural couples that are thinking the exact same way, because this is their life. This is part of their life, not knowing what the future will bring, having a rough plan, but then it just might change 10,000 times. And family and friends, they always tell us like, hey, where are you going to be in 1 or 2 years? And we're like, hey, we don't know yet. Don't ask me, because we really don't know. It's just like, it's a huge, the end is open in the end. Like, and it's just like, for so many people, it's different or difficult to accept, because I tell you, like, the same people would ask the same question over and over again. They will always get the same answer, but somehow for them, it's just difficult to understand, like, hey, how can't you know where you're going to live on the long run? And my family as well, like, hey, you're going to live in Germany on the long run, no? Because you want to have kids, you want to have a family. I want to be a grandma, you know? And Nacho's family is like the same, like, hey, you are going to live in Argentina on the long run. And we're like, what's there's no middle. Like, it's like,
sometimes we feel like there's another reason for neutral countries, like mutual dissatisfaction, you know, like you're dissatisfied, but you're no more dissatisfied than the other side. We're not dissatisfying you more. And so
that's our justification.
But at the same time, you know, you can get the feedback of like, well, I mean, we might have the argument, oh, if we're neutral and neither of us knows the language, neither of us knows the culture. And that to us makes sense. But to other people, like, what? Like,
why?
Don't you want to go to a place where at least one of you knows the culture? At least one of you have at least one grandparent there to help take care of kids. And like, if you can't get both of you, I'll at least get one of the two. And then like, why would you go to one where you know none of them? Like you have no understanding of things. And it's like, that's this idea of a fresh start, an idea of equal playing grounds. And for us, we always have the dynamic in a relationship too, where I'm from a country that is like rich, influential, not just like politically, but also culturally.
Media.
And that has an ability to strongly shape our relationship as well as the kids that we hope to have one day. And we don't want that. We want to have a relationship where things are on equal grounds. And it's not just because we see in other relationships, when, especially say somebody from a smaller country, that you have like the parent that comes from the main country and then the other parent, like they come from that weird small country someplace. And like, we don't want that. We want something where the language, you know, we'll probably have a more dominant language in the house. That's just helpful to have, although we'll probably speak different languages to kids. But, you know, and we'll have, if we're living in Europe, it's going to be closer to my culture than hers. But as much as possible, we want to search for something where we can find a neutrality and create that balance. But yeah, finding home, just like what you were saying earlier, to exploring all of Europe and South America, looking for just a place to call home. It's really funny that how I was so comfortable and certain with the idea of home in the US until I met her. And as soon as you start considering home on a different continent or in a different country, it's like the entire world opens up. And we were having times like, maybe Canada, maybe Germany, maybe New Zealand, Australia is nice. We could go to Cambodia. What about South America? We never thought about like, we have to pick a continent. Like, At the very least, a continent to try to settle, and then from there, country, city, and once you start, you just don't know where it's going to take you. It makes me think of that quote from, I guess, The Hobbit, Bilbo Baggins, like, once you pick up your bag and get on the road, you don't know where the wind will take you. Kind of like, as soon as you're kind of on the way, you don't know where you're going to go, where you're going to end up. And suddenly everything, if you feel that resiliency to try to make something work in a totally different place, then what is South America compared to a new part of Asia, a new part of Europe? Okay, a new language to learn, new visas to get, new culture to come through, but okay, that's kind of like what we already did. And that decision fatigue of trying to decide is difficult, but we're getting better at narrowing it down, but we still have a lot of work to do on it.
Yeah, but that's the best part.
Yeah.
As I that the best part is just like not going the straight path.
Yeah.
And it's just like sometimes it's also okay not to have a goal, and to basically not do what society expects you to do.
Yeah.
And just swim against the current, and do your own thing, because like after all, it's going to make you happy, and that's the most important.
It makes me think of a quote from, there's an author, Jack Kerouac, who like inspired a lot of traveling of mine, and he had a line that was, "A straight line leads only to death," and talked about, if you just made it through life and everything went exactly how you wanted, okay, you're gonna hit one target after the next, and you're gonna just fly through on a bullet train to the end of your life, and then you're there. But is that really what you want? And oftentimes what we end up having is more, you have a goal, and instead of going straight to that goal, you go a little bit to the left, and then you move your goal to the left, and then you go a little to the right, and it turns into this zigzagging thing where in the end you're kind of encircling your goal, but as the goal is changing, you're going a different way. And that path, instead of this direct bullet train to the end of your life, you end up taking a beautiful train ride through the mountains, going up and down, and seeing so many different little things that you never expected. And I think that's one of the beauties of traveling too, is that you always have, I always compare it to like a book. It feels like it sometimes, where you feel like a main character, and you are writing this story, but you have no idea what the next characters in that story are going to be, or the next setting. And like when you think about the most impactful people you met in the last few years, especially for us, like there's oftentimes like all the people I interact with on a regular basis, I had no idea that they existed a couple of years ago. And even if I tried my best to imagine an interesting person, I would have never imagined that person, because they come with a set of characteristics and influences that you couldn't even begin to imagine before meeting them, or a place might bring about different influences and interests that you could have never imagined before going there. And so I'm always just curious about what the next chapters will bring, which new characters will bring in, and it makes it easier to deal with some of the losses of friends and family along the way, is that you know that some of these incredible people that you met, there's more of them out there, and you're not going to meet them on purpose. You're going to stumble across them in this crazy fusion of life, and come across people who are incredible and completely unknown, but they're out there. And likewise, home is the same. That I think, just like we found each other quite randomly, we found some of his friends quite randomly, I feel like one day we're just going to kind of arrive someplace, and I hope at least that it will feel like, I think this is it. And more than anything, scared that it's not going to feel like that, and that what it's actually going to take is a place that goes, I don't know about this place, but maybe this could be it. And you just have to be there for 5 years or so, and then at that point to go, oh yeah, I guess this is it, because that's much harder. I think both of us are pretty intuitive and instinctive with working with what you feel at that current moment, and it makes a lot of sense to invest time into a place for it to become that, because that's what you did with your childhood. But at the same time, since we're so used to doing things on a quicker basis, to devote that much time to a place that could in the end not be it,
it's difficult.
It's difficult, and we're getting older, so we feel like we need to find some place. So yeah.
Some point, yeah.
Some point.
Yeah,
in
you're
life.
not. I mean, we are 30 and 32, and
Yeah.
it's like it could be that we're not going to find a home like for the next 5 years. And
Yeah.
we were also talking about like buying a bigger van and I don't know, raising a family while traveling. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like everything is possible nowadays, and that's the great thing. That limit is what you set yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in reality, there are no limits as long as you're willing to just jump for it
Yeah.
and cross your personal comfort zone, which is also very, very important. Sometimes it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And it comes with a lot of fear.
Yeah.
But in the end, it will always worth it. At least this is what I believe in.
Sure.
Or what we believe in. I'm talking for Nacho as well. Basically to come to an end.
Sure.
I mean, we've talked about like the communication we're just having is like the past few years of you being in a relationship. Like there's no straight path. It just went like with a lot of curves. We talked about the financial situation, like how you manage it, about your future plans, about how you got to know each other, about like really like we're having a very deep conversation, and I really enjoy talking to you guys.
Enjoy it too.
And as we mentioned, pardon?
We enjoy it too.
Thank you. It's just like as we also mentioned during our conversation, you have family and friends that are like, for them it's very, very difficult to understand what you're going through and why you're doing what you're doing. And I feel like the community, the long distance relationship community, and the multicultural couple community just getting bigger and bigger, which is amazing to see, like how much it grew the past few months due to COVID, especially, and how they stick together and how well they are connected. But if there's one advice, or it could also be, I think one is a little bit difficult, one or two advices you would like to give to everyone who's listening right now, who's struggling maybe with the financial situation, who's not 100% sure if the step he or she is going right now is the right step to go for. What advice could you give?
I think for me, I would say find the community. Find someone that you could relate to. Sometimes the choice that you choose might seem normal to this community, but might be totally sounds really crazy to others who never been in this having that experience. So just to have the community that can reaffirm you that what you're doing is not crazy, I think it really helped a lot.
Yeah. To add to that, when you're trying to meet up with that person, the thing that we were talking about earlier is, when it gets hard, you have to. There's something I heard once that was first with the head, then with the heart, and kind of reminds me of these situations where you have to lead in some sense, like pretty strategically, and really devote to it as if it's your job, as if it's your project, to see what are the ways that I can do this. And it sounds like you'll take the heart out of it, but you will also get this feeling of progress. And what the hardest thing for me was the feeling of feeling powerless. And if you can take that power back by saying, I'm going to look through and see every one of the options I have, check them off my list. If they don't work, they don't work. But if they do, what are the ways? Talk to some other people who have experience with it. Reach out on community boards and through Instagram and things like that to people who've gone through something similar. Ask how they did it. Find your path through it. And when things get hard, then go to the heart and remember why you're doing it. Remember what that person means to you. Spend enough time with them, not just worrying about the future, but trying to enjoy what you can, even if it's long distance. So that way you remember what you're fighting for. In the end, you have to be on the same page with the other person. Both sides may be willing to fight hard for it. But if it's worth it, then there's no reason to give up on it, even if it takes a while. There will always be a way, but you have to be willing to adapt. And when one plan doesn't work, then just start looking for the other. As soon as you can set that date They said, okay, I have this date, and at this point, these things will come together, and we'll be able to make this work. Everything will become so much easier because now you're counting down, and even if you're counting down 1 year in advance, having that ticker that's going there could be much easier than if you're going to see a person in a week, but it's uncertain. The uncertainty is what kills it more than anything.
Yeah. So you think it's also important to set like smaller milestones on the long run?
Something to look forward to. Something to look forward to, and whenever possible, if you're long distance, try to keep the relationship physical in the sense of sending something to the person, snail mail or a package or something like that, some like piece of clothing with your smell on it, just something that the person doesn't forget that you are not just a message on their phone or something like this, something that can be interrupted by an internet connection. Remind them that you are a real breathing person out there who's trying to get back to them. And when you have that in your head, and they're not just a concept, but they're a real thing, then it gets easier when things get hard to look to the heart.
That's true. Yeah, and also by doing this, making statement like, hey, we're both sitting in the same boat, we're both feeling the same way, and constant communication about feelings, even though if it's not easy.
Yeah.
Like at least for me, it's never easy to talk about feelings, but that's also the way to go when you like the relationship to work on the long run, especially when it's a long distance relationship.
For sure.
Yeah. So is there anything else you would like to add? Because we covered pretty much a lot.
I guess I just like to add one thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about like limitations and roadblocks and stuff, is something my mom used to say a lot to me, which I think translates very well to anyone in a long distance relationship, which is argue for your limitations and they are yours. And basically coming to the idea that if you are convincing yourself that there are so many things preventing you from happening, you just list them out to yourself and you're trying to pretty much convince yourself that there are all these limitations, then you will never be able to get past those. And so you have to start, even if you see those limitations, for arguing for why it could work, for arguing why you could make it happen. Because if you start off by arguing to this, kind of repeating back all the limitations that people have told you that you're going to face and all the things that are going to be difficult for you to get past, you have to at least be the number one supporter of your plan, of your relationship goals. Yeah. If you are yourself not believing in it, it gets really hard. And so that stubborn optimism comes in to say, I know that there's these limitations out there. I know it's difficult, but I believe that there's going to be a way. And even if it's naive and you're like us and trying to get 2 student visas to go to Germany, even though you have a limited financial budget and it's going to run out, just go for what you see in front of you, and along the way, adapt and grow, and you'll find a way through.
Don't have anything else to add. I think I'm gonna call this episode Stubborn Optimism.
Would love that.
Stubborn Optimism. I love it. Yeah, thank you so much for your time, guys. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It's just I don't know, it just brings back so many memories while talking to you. And also the point, like, not looking back, asking yourself the question, like, what if I would have made another decision,
Yeah.
And because I feel like this is the worst that can happen to you.
Yeah.
Looking back and regretting your decisions and just going for it, doing what feels right. I really enjoyed our conversation. This is the story and journey of Jesse and Rita. Thank you so much for listening to our conversation. If you like what we're doing, feel free to leave us a review on iTunes. And as always, also feel free to ask us anything, any questions, either via Facebook or via Instagram. It's International Love Story. We're here to help and to connect with you guys. And have a wonderful morning, have a wonderful day, have a wonderful evening wherever you're listening to this episode right now. And please take care. Bye.
My eyes still sparkle the times when I hear your name, and our hearts, we remain the same. Just claims that attack every corner of a loving face, and words that float in sunlight and cloudy dim my heart and mind. I don't mind.